Testing 1 2 3, testing 1 2 3. Let me get a quick mic check here. And I believe we will be live. I got the alert. Oh, and an ad. Look at that. All right. I got to do a mic check, so allow me to mute. All right, and we look like we are good to go. Welcome, everybody, to TopShelf Fandom. I'm Justin Thomas. I'm joined with Johnny B. Crazy from House of the Conqueror, and we are going to be talking about Watchmen and the House of the Dragon. Sounds like a Bruce Lee movie a little bit, but the newest Song of Ice and Fire property that is seemingly straight to series. Before we do that, and before I even let the lovely Johnny introduce himself, I do want to go ahead and say this video has a sponsor. It is Bonus VPN. You can see on the screen right here. It's kind of cool. They reached out to me because I cover a lot of things like Peaky Blinders and other ITV properties. VPN, of course, can keep you safe online and more secure. It's especially important when you're at Starbucks or whatever public Wi-Fi you may use. I'm not very... I'm pretty loose when it comes to like how much I think people are really trying to get me, so I won't use the scare tactic. But I will say, when you are at Starbucks and we are using public Wi-Fi, it is kind of a snake pit out there. But the big thing for me with the VPN is I'm able to do what you see on screen right now. Go on, sign on, and you can do this for free. You get 2 gigs for free, and you don't have to give them a credit card, so they're not running that scam where they're just hoping that you forget to unsubscribe. Turn on the VPN. I want to act like I'm in UK. I'm in the UK. Bam. Remember how you guys couldn't watch Peaky Blinders right away? Here you go. Peaky Blinders, season 5, episode 1. So you can use things like the iPlayer from BBC. You can also use England's Netflix, which gives you Rick and Morty as it airs, and it's just got a variety of different shows in different regions. So it's not just for security, which is important, but I'm not going to fear monger here. We'll wait for Watchmen to do that. So it's cool. They're supporting me, and again, it doesn't even need your credit card. So Bonus VPN, check them out, guys, and that's my shtick on it. Johnny, the lovely Johnny B. Crazy, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty well. I looked in the mirror, so I'm happy today. No, thanks for having me on, man. We got some intriguing topics, and that VPN looks pretty damn good, man. I might have to check that out. I need me some Rick and Morty in my life, and I don't, you know, that's my selling point. That's what sold me, so I get that. Yeah, Watchmen. I don't know. I mean, people say it's kind of controversial, but I don't feel it's that overhanded right now. It does make you ask questions, but does it portray society as it actually is? Uh, yeah, no, not really. But this happens. Things happen, and fucking, that's what cinema is. It follows along what's going on with society. It mirrors society. It makes it a little more intense, pulls it into a story. I mean, that's kind of
It's like
the
an
history of
isolation
storytelling.
chamber. It's an isolation chamber of behavioral traits. It's very much amplified, and we can say that this is a series that is polarizing for sure. I think that it's something that is intriguing, and I have a lot of hopes for it. I'm on Team Lindelof for this one. We're going to get into that a little bit because before we jump into Watchmen, we are going to just give you the news update on House of the Dragon and talk about that a little bit. But we do have a nice supplemental source for Watchmen, not just the Peaky. What is it?
Peteypedia. And Petey's the guy that's Laurie Blake or Silk Spectre's little partner that is the projector man.
Yeah. Well, they have a podcast as well, because it's always hard when, I'm critiquing something. It's always like, well, what is the series trying to do before I say, did it accomplish it or not? And a lot of times the creators themselves are so ambiguous, and they won't stick to any major messages that they're trying to, because they don't want to say they're doing allegory and they don't want to do this. But we have a official HBO Watchmen podcast. I tweeted this out earlier this week. I think it's pivotal, especially if you're somebody that's going to be critiquing it, to listen to the man himself. It's ran by I can't remember the creator, though, the writer for Chernobyl. who did the Chernobyl podcast as well, and it's got Lindelof on it, Damon Lindelof. So he's explaining himself, and we'll talk about some stuff he said. So we're gonna look at it, and we're gonna give it a little bit. We're gonna zoom out a little bit. We're not gonna give you an episodic review, but we're gonna talk about some of the major plot threads. So yeah, and thank you so much for coming on, Johnny. And since you are the House of the Conqueror, you want to talk about House of the Dragon, the straight to series order that HBO has giving right after crushing the pilot for Age of Heroes. Now, I was on the Age of Heroes panel at Con of Thrones. Couldn't be happier to be a part of it. I will say, it's, in all fairness, I've always been skeptical of what they were trying to do there as far as turning monomyth into fact and using a lot of locations that were not going to be something that was familiar to your casual viewers, which high concept needs. But how bad did that pilot have to be for them to kill it? It's really amazing to me. It's kind of giving me hope, because I do believe they want to put out a good product, because they literally have postponed Thrones for another year because of this, essentially. So it does show that they're having some good intentions here, and they want to please everybody and make something that's worthwhile. But it's also a little bit interesting that it's straight to series. So this is 10 episodes that we're for sure getting, and I don't even know if there's a script written. So that's interesting. Go ahead, Johnny, take it away.
Maybe there's a series Bible. We don't know. We're not getting much out of it. What's the name? Brian Condal? Known for such TV series as Hercules and Colony. Kevin Sorbo may be in the new Fire and Blood. We could see that.
Oop, are you there, Johnny?
It's going to look a lot better than Dan and Dave. But I think the thing with this, I believe George pretty much agreed to work with them pretty closely. I think he is. There's a lot of lore. These stories are finished, but there's a lot of details to fill in. Even though some of these stories are super detailed, Fire and Blood is a fantastic read. If you haven't checked it out, go get it, because it's a lot less complicated read than A Song of Ice and Fire as well. Not saying that, but it is nice and smooth and straightforward. And we don't really know what they're covering. There's so much history in this. This is only part one of Fire and Blood. This is all the reign of the Targaryen king. So how are they going to split this up?
It's 150 years, correct?
Right, just in this book.
Yes.
It's 300 years total, I think, about nearabouts. I could be wrong on that, but just correct me.
They're saying there's the possibility for them to start season 1 with Aegon's conquest. I'm against that. We talked a little bit before. I had the notion that I think it'd be smart to give us, flashbacks, not green sight, not anything like that. I know Dan and Dave hated flashbacks and found them to be cheap, but also didn't understand what themes were. Maybe they should read an 8th grade book report. But I think you get an old man-esque character in there, and you get people maybe even just having flashbacks and remembering the history of a maester, and give us the conquest as we kind of got Robert's rebellion. But Johnny's got a lot of insight into this, and I respect your opinion, especially when it comes to Fire and Blood. I would say don't go in that linear fashion from starting with the conquest. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I believe we'll hear stories and flashbacks about it. I think it'd be too much to ask for any TV show to go through that many generations of characters. You're going to have to do so much recasting and casting in general for a TV show, getting good actors, getting them in the right parts, not just getting good actors. You gotta play to their strengths. You gotta work with them, not just give them blank emoting like D&D, but kind of play to their strengths. And if you have to have a rotation of that, it's going to really be tough to carry over. You're almost guaranteed to have a couple of bad seasons. I think honestly they should pick up with the reign of Jaehaerys, when the Targaryen reign was at its height, and or supposedly, at least the propaganda throughout the book, Jaehaerys and Alysanne were admitted propaganda machines. But we see this time of peace and plenty. Maybe we get some stories about the conquest, and then it goes into the dance after the death of Viserys Targaryen and the Gangrene Council, as I've dubbed it. And there's a lot of drama, suspense. It will be the Game of Thrones like you want it. There will be a lot of dragons, but you won't necessarily have to have dragons in every shot. The dragons don't follow them around. They're usually parked somewhere like a car, so we don't necessarily have to worry about those budget concerns.
And they got Miguel. They got Miguel on board as a showrunner. So, and then Ryan Condal, I believe is his name, and he did Colony. So I'm not so sure on his background, but they got a lot of faith in it. This is something that's pretty solid for the source material, meaning it's, even if we didn't get the second half of this, which they're supposed to be for the later 150 years of the dynasty, it holds up. It's well written. It's fun material. It's something I think that's good to play with. I agree that we should start with Jaehaerys because that's the height of the Targaryen power. If you're going to have the Civil War as the focus, for people to care about the divide, they have to see them as a strong unit that's unified. So you have to show the unification and the strong bond that they have to evoke emotion for the split. So I think it just is common sense to start with Jaehaerys. That's the height right there. That's when and then it peaks with the height of the dragons, meaning like the amount of dragons. And it just, from a narrative standpoint, that makes a lot of sense right there. And you could have, again, a maester, an old Nanask, anything. Do the, hold off on the conquest because they got the Empire of Ash in the works is one of the other projects that's not greenlit, but they're currently attempting to get it greenlit. So maybe not play it so close with that one. Maybe leave some room for some stuff after. I think the conquest is too much. It's too similar in my opinion, and I know it's vastly different, but to what Dany's actual story thread was. So I think that rehashing a Targaryen coming and taking Westeros isn't the best way to start off the spinoffs. Just like I didn't think the Age of Heroes was the best way. I think the best way would be to show Jaehaerys, the height of the power, and then show that civil divide.
Yeah, and you're playing off a little bit of what Daenerys dreamed of regaining back too in the beginning of the show.
Yes.
And with the Doom of Valyria prequel, you have there's already a series Bible and a script Bible for that one. I don't know who's seen it, but I know that there's confirmed been that they have them. That one's, I hope that gets greenlit, but that will require a lot of CGI because there's so many dragons and the way that old Valyria looked back then. But it just depends on the directions that they go, and they may. And Casey Bloys says here that there may not be multiple spinoffs. That
nothing wrong with that either. Remember, people, there was good stories before this, and there's good stories after it. Don't make it a Star Wars.
Right. Yeah, definitely don't do that, please. That just gave me like a small panic attack. Don't don't make it like Star Wars. But and I agree with you as far as where they should take it. They have many and more stories that they can pull from. I mean, you have the history and lore, but Aegon's kind of straightforward, and there's not as much detail. You will have to make up some things. Here, yes, you have opportunity for creative freedom, but also you have a pretty good guideline where you're not going to go so off story that it's unrecognizable, like what happened in season 8 or season 7.
Well, and again,
6 of Game of Thrones
aren't finished. I see all signs of them never being finished. Sorry,
Yeah.
I want them to be finished, but it comes to a point where it's like, is he just behind, or has it passed the year point in which these books are just not going to get done? Because like, if I told you I was going to get Milk 13 years ago, and I still haven't come back with the milk, do you think it's going to be the best milk ever? You might conclude that milk's not coming, especially when I keep hanging out in the dairy section like George is and like writing other stuff. I'm just saying, I don't think those books are coming. I think Winds is coming. That's just my shtick on that. I think this is smart. I think you showed, because really, if you're going to do Aegon's conquest, the first Dornish War would be really the event to highlight, and that's after the conquest. I mean, it's right after, but like, there's not a lot of pushback for the conquest. Essentially he runs roughshod through it, and it's an intriguing and enticing tale, but I think it's better as a tale, just like the Age of Heroes with Land the Clever and stuff like that, and Bran the Builder. Some things are better left unseen. The mystery box, which can kind of lead us off, unless you want to discuss any more into the king of the mystery box, Lindelof, and we'll talk about some things that he said in the first official podcast. Were you done with the actual Thrones stuff there, Johnny? Any
Oh, I
last
mean,
thoughts?
I mean, I'm gonna be doing a stream about it on my channel, and also I got some a big whole thing, Chronicles of Fire and Blood. That'll be a bunch of videos coming out, so you can go check that out. House of the Conqueror name change, formerly known as Johnny B Crazy, but that still is my name. It's just the name of the channel
It's
has
his
changed,
legal
in
name.
case
It
you're
says
wondering
it.
in the
So
chat.
that baby's gonna be crazy.
Um,
So
but yeah, let's get into the Wokeman, because I mean, Steve York hates this, but I think he only looks at the parts that are um, democratic in the show. But we'll get into it. I do kind of agree with him how Sister Night, throws a bunch of limp wrist punches and beats
oh no,
everybody
yeah,
up, and you
the
know,
yeah, I'm with you on that. The action is yeah, she's not holding Regina's not holding up in that aspect, in my point. Some of that looks kind of suspect. Well, the show's polarizing, as we said. Lindelof has literally said in the official companion podcast that he is solving for race. Like, what are the characters solving for? It's something that you always say when you're trying to form a narrative, is what are they solving for? And we're going to kind of talk about how Judd Crawford's actual death is what they're solving for on the surface level, and race is what they're addressing underneath it. But they're also addressing a lot of what you would consider to be leftist views, a lot of liberal, the over censor ship of everything. They're living in this highly liberal landscape, and they've put they've changed the power structure. They put the shoe on the other foot, is what they're doing here. And they're showing us real events. They start off with Tulsa in 1921, and a lot of people didn't know about that. And that's something that is very effective for a story, to give us like this wacky world in which the Watchmen inhabit, and show us squids raining from the sky in the same episode that opened up with Tulsa 21. Something, again, that no shame in not knowing about that, because there's a reason it's not highly publicized, and it leads to people opening their eyes. And it doesn't mean that you have to go and crap on a certain type of person or a certain political party or race. That's the opposite. It's just a perspective, and to say, oh, well, I bet that didn't happen, because it seems pretty crazy, right? Because it's, squids are right next to it raining on a windshield. That's not something you've heard about. It seems a little over the top. Nope, happened exactly like that. The second episode, they do the same thing. I call them hard truths. With the First World War, you have the German Empire dropping propaganda, which it was propaganda, but give it its due. It's pretty effective propaganda, because it had just enough truth in it to say, well, can you guys even go home and ride in the same vehicles? Can you walk down the same streets, use the same facilities? So we've seen our characters being affected by the over nostalgization. That's not a word. The nostalgia effect, the bleaching and airbrushing of history, essentially. Like the Old West Americana, all that, like the way it's depicted. That's not really how things were. This glorifying of these days, and playing off of these types of events to give us the surreal and the real. And I think it's pretty effective. I think that it's a little on the nose in some areas, but he is ambitious enough to say, I'm approaching race. And at the very least, you can't say hate doesn't exist in our culture. Whether or not you believe it's as prevalent as it is, hate exists and fear exists. And one of the big questions they ask is, why do they wear masks? Well, you wear masks for a number of reasons, but one of the biggest reasons you wear a mask is you're afraid. You're afraid of something. Everybody that puts on a mask, fear is in a part of that decision. So you can't deny that fear and hate exist. So the core issue is a legitimate issue. I got a few comments myself on one of the videos I did saying, can't you open your eyes? It's propaganda. How could you be so foolish, or whatever? I think they were semi nice about it. But I took a little offense to that, thinking, how stupid do you think I am, and how weak are you to not be able to watch something? Even if this was propaganda, I'd stop watching it, but it wouldn't roll me over and form my own ideology. Like, what do you do? Just have information slap you in the face and do whatever it says? No, that's why we like insightful television. That's why we like all these high concept series that have come out, because it's very insightful and it's very thought-provoking, and that's what this should do. So it's like, if this was propaganda, I wouldn't be doing a video on it, but trust me, I could watch propaganda and not turn into a Nazi or not turn into a snowflake. So
Well, I mean, the thing about this is it's being shown as black and white, pun intended, and this goes back to Rorschach's view. And his words got manipulated, his journal got manipulated into a cult of sorts, and that's what Steve York really hates, and he hates Lost, so he really just hates Lindelof. But that's beside the point. It's set up as a world of black and white, and we're going to see that it's really, really gray. Right now, we're getting one side or the other. I mean, you were talking about this, uh, especially how TV shows, the end, the finale, or whatever you would say, the end of the story usually comes right around to the beginning again. So we're gonna probably see another aspect of Tulsa 21, maybe Tulsa 19, near the end of the series, which supposedly is only going one season, but we'll see where they go with that. And I think that it does make you ask those questions. It evokes emotions. It pisses you off because the first thing you do when you're challenged with a set of ideas, or you're challenged with something that you're not used to, or maybe something that you just react to, like Rorschach's journal, like Steve does. Uh, uh, Sometimes it gives you a reset and gives you time to sit back and think, because just throughout history, people's writings have been misinterpreted, have been manipulated. I mean, we see it with even religion. Things get manipulated for,
you
it's an
think
end
Karl
to a
Marx
means,
thought that
honestly.
his Marxist ideals were going to be injected into what became the Soviet Union? You think that he saw Russia as the
No.
ideal place for his Marxist ideology? No, he saw the like utopia of a like very successful capitalist government, like that only once having vast resources could do something like this. Russia was the complete opposite. So like, yeah, like Johnny's saying, not to interrupt, but that's so true. You know, like all people can use anything. We can take the Constitution. Look how much that seems like it should be pretty straightforward. What's said on paper, people use that as a vehicle for whatever the fuck they want it. The Bible, not all that straightforward, but yeah, use it as a vehicle for whatever you want. You know, right? It's whatever suits you best. Sorry to interrupt there. I
Well, you
agree.
can take a couple of lines from the dictionary and make it be prophetic in a sense, or turn it into words of manipulation. It just depends on the person. This is a cult type setting that, and I don't know if I said this before, but all Democrats are considered communist right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're called the communists under the breath, and well, they say it aloud into their faces now. It's somewhat known as the Communist Party that they're fighting against, and so this plan has been enacted for a while. It's just like we saw the German propaganda. I think there's been propaganda going on in America for a while to set up this vast conspiracy that's at play. And like me and you were talking about before, I'm pretty much Senator Kane is probably in the middle of all this.
Yeah, let's get into that, because what we have here is it's I did a video about Dramatica story theory, and if you've seen True Detective utilizes Dramatica story theory. What Dramatica story theory is, well, it's a story theory, but essentially it's a who done it is very good for Dramatica story theory, because it's always polar opposites working against each other, as you remember in the first season with Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. Sorry. You see their two characters, you see their clashing views, ideologies, and you see them fighting against each other. But what True Detective does is by the end of the story, it's never the big, like, like pedophilia ring, or the, big cult movement that they thought it was, like, with all of these, theories that come out. But here's the thing, those things do still exist, and you got a little bit of perspective into them and insight into the bigger thing. So what I'm getting at here is Dramatica uses a like a superficial question, and our question is, the murder, or if it was a murder, of Judd Crawford works as this is how we get into our situation, in which then you can solve for race. The reason that even Lindelof said he doesn't have an answer, this is not a series that has an answer for how do we stop people from being biased against people of other colors. Let's not be ridiculous. But it's going to hopefully get people to understand a little bit better how other people feel. And we have the
Yeah,
murder
how
of
did they get to that point? How did they
Yes.
get to the point of feeling this like they need to be white supremacists? It usually comes from fear and ignorance, a state of not understanding what's really going on. So you're trying to protect yourself, and it goes back to tribalistic caveman times almost, is how I look at it.
Well, absolutely, because what we have here is, okay, we have a pretty straightforward scenario, right? If you look at it, we should have the answer to our question of who killed Judd right away. We've been given it, correct? With
Yeah.
Will. Will fully takes the responsibility for this murder. So why does Angela not believe Will? Is it because he can't lift 205 pounds? Is it because he's African American? Why would he do this? Why would he side with the 7th Cavalry? We see how the German propaganda is in his hand when he is actually apprehended. But there's a little bit of a callback to Bass Reeves in the beginning of this with the white sheriff on the end of the rope. So we have to ask ourselves, okay, if Will Reeves is the murderer, why would he do that? Does there have anything to do with a corruption of Judd Crawford? In my opinion, Judd Crawford has been showcased as exactly the type of person they want you to believe was corrupt. If they were going to be that obvious, they wouldn't be that obvious. It's too straightforward. His actions on the night of the White Night, or his whereabouts and what happened to him, doesn't really add up. How catering he was to everybody, and how good of a guy he seemed in the one episode we got didn't add up. So I'm coming to the conclusion of they want us to believe something's up with that, but I don't think that he put on that suit that we found in his closet, the Klan suit. I think that was a part of his family, and I think that we're going to get a little bit of a deeper dive, because for this to work, we have the second part, which is Angela with Lori, who Silk Spectre. So we have a comeback, and we have the only original member, right, that's present except for Ozymandias, right?
Yeah.
From the graphic novels. But we have her in the form of working against Angela's way of justice, because Angela's way is, in the first episode, just kicking ass, right? And then the second episode, after her actual confrontation and association with Will, she's already changed the way that she behaves. They say it when they're at Nixonville, right? They say Red Scare, very on the nose, right there, says, why don't you want to kick these guys' ass? You love kicking these guys' ass. And Looking Glass, seemingly the purest person in this group, says that is without a doubt. So she's already changing her ideology within one episode. This is what I'm talking about with Dramatica, with them working off of each other. You already have Angela changing the way that she's operating, because she can't understand it, because there wasn't a white guy with a Klan's mask under that tree. No, we're looking at Will in a wheelchair, an African-American man. Whoa. Right there. So it jams up the situation, and then you have the procedural with Andra and Lori Black.
It all comes back to perception and maybe being misrepresented. Judd Crawford possibly was in the 7th Cavalry, got out, or his family was associated with it, as we know his father. Now, we've seen the letter in the Peteypedia articles that he received this painting, Feats of Comanche Horsemanship, which actually is, the name is inverted because it's a copy by the original artist. Anyways, going into that, that it's going to end up being morally gray. You're going to see possibly that even if someone is perceived to be a white supremacist, associates with the white supremacist, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's who they are anymore. He could have used to be him possibly, and that may become the bittersweet pill of his death, that he's paying for sins committed when he was younger.
So now
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no. What we have is a situation where we have Senator Keene. The Keene Act, now, it's important to take note that the Keene Act is something that is only present in Tulsa, only in Oklahoma at least. It doesn't spread any further than that. So that is the act in which makes it so police wear masks. And this is something that they're addressing. What are masks? What does it mean to be ambiguous, even in justice, even when supposedly doing the just thing? So we have the the 7th Cavalry, and we have to be careful with this because we're not saying the Klan's all right, but we're saying the depiction of the Klan in this world might not be as at least simple or straightforward as you think they might be. When they have Judd's funeral, we have the suicide bomber, yes, but what does he actually ask for? He asks for Senator Kane. He's not just there to destroy them and hurt them. He wants something politically, probably to stop the Keene Act. So we're looking at another morally ambiguous, a little gray area. It wouldn't make sense for this series just to have it be the Sister Knight against the KKK. Something is up. Judd might have a family background with it, but these are all very interesting aspects of it. And then we have the third party in this, which is Dr. Manhattan. We have Dr. Manhattan still influencing the world when we don't have him in our world.
And he's influencing it, but he could give two shits about it. He sees beyond that. Now in the comics, Laurie Silk Spectre changes his mind about humanity and helping, and we know this culminates in him killing Rorschach and actually Ozymandias letting him fulfill his plan of the interdimensional invasion to bring the people together, along with killing a bunch of other people. And I think that's kind of what's going to happen here. The only person I think he cares about on the entire planet is Laurie Blake, who, interestingly enough, took her father's mantle, who she was born of rape.
Yeah, I just started
the comedian
the
raped her mother.
God damn. Wow. Yeah. It's up there.
And she has, since the comics, she's taken her father's last name and been living pretty much as the comedian, the cynical, nihilistic man that he was. Didn't give a fuck. He kind of saw, and actually Dr. Manhattan says that the comedian sees the world almost as the same way that he does. Like he kind of respects how even though the comedian even has shocked him at times, and he could have stopped him at any time.
Joke, and he doesn't care about anything. And it's like a polar opposite with Manhattan, that he's so pragmatic that he doesn't give a shit about anything. Like this would not be the person that you would be calling. Let's go to these boots. We have Laurie going, and I'm almost, I think Johnny's in agreement with me in an ironic way, in calling and telling jokes to Dr. Manhattan. This is owned by the True Company, correct? Is that the correct pronunciation of that? Is it that on the nose?
Yeah, True.
Yeah, True. Okay, so the True Company, that Ozymandias is out. They charge to use these booths, and people are calling. It's almost like a confessional to go in. This is not the guy you call in the bath to talk about your day. Don't call any guys and do that usually, unless you're, I won't get into it. But anyways, Dr. Manhattan is not the person to lean your head on when you're down. He is the complete opposite of that. In the graphic novels, and as well as the Snyder film, from what I've seen. And this is something that's interesting that they address in the podcast, because they say they have to be of the source material but yet completely apart from it, which I find to be very enticing. And I'd like to know your views on how much do we really lean on the source material, because I said this up front, I came in this trying to be a purist because I had never been exposed to this. I was like, wow, I'm actually not already in the deep here. Like, I'm actually going to watch this as a regular television, not like a podcaster, not a YouTube person. Like, I'm just going to watch a show and see if I enjoy it, because this is going to be very polarizing. There was a lot of buzz around it. I was like, this might be a shit show. So I came at it very just came at it with virgin eyes, you could say. And I thought right away, wow, does this depend a lot on the source material? And now that I did, as of last night, started doing the graphic novels, and I couldn't help it anymore because I'm loving it. But it is so much better once you have the source material in with Rorschach and in with Dr. Manhattan, especially. I really think it's pivotal for you to understand their ideologies, right?
Yeah, it really. I don't know. I think he failed in that aspect. I feel like he kind of feels like he knows he couldn't get away from it. I mean, this was his favorite thing as a child, his favorite story. This is what pretty much inspired him to become what he has become, whether you like him or not. And I think that it there's not much separation. You have the way his form of storytelling makes you either want to dig deeper or stop watching because you can't keep up, unfortunately.
He
And I
better.
don't mind it.
Yes. I'm coming around to that because I was poisoned, and W. Axel Foley is a colleague of mine, and a good friend, and he loves Lost, and I kind of gave him shit because I was poisoned against it from my acting teachers in my early 20s and my writing teachers. And now I'm, a piece of shit, so I just like took their word, and I was young and influenceable. I was conditioned against it, so like I've never given it a true chance. But now seeing his storytelling method and having a better understanding of story theory, I do think there's something to be said for him. But also he needs to make sure to give people answers to these surface level overt plot threads. Like, who killed Judd needs to be answered, because as I said, who killed Judd is a road that gets you to see along the way the bigger picture, and we can explore these bigger ideas through the investigation of Judd's murder, also with a juxtaposition with Lori and Sister Night. All right, because she is against the masked vigilante lifestyle now, and she does, so you have these people clashing, and it's all about the journey. I know it's a cliche, but it's really all about the journey when it comes to this story. Like, who killed Judd? We probably already do know the answer. It probably was Will, and it really doesn't matter that much if it wasn't in the end. I'm guessing. But if you don't seal up, like, it's pretty much asking somebody to walk down a road to see a house on fire, but you really just want to have exposed them what's on the way, and then they get to the end of the road and there's no house on fire. I can't think of a better metaphor, but I think he does that a lot, is that he like leads people down roads. And we have a moment with Will where he does say something that really scared me. It really scared me. He said, I think it's right here.
I'm Will. The one who strung up your chief of police.
Who are you?
I'm Will. Who are you? Chief of police.
He says that if he had to tell her everything, her head would explode. He doesn't give a lot of details that she's demanding. So exposition is demanded of him right before that. Sorry, couldn't get it right on cue. And he says, your head would explode if I told you everything. Lindelof, I'm loving what you're doing so far, but Will better have some fucking like reason that comes better than it's like that old wizard trope when he's like, I didn't teach you everything, and he dies right before, when they had plenty of time together. It actually happens with Bloodraven. Remember? Plenty of time to teach him shit. Why wasn't Bran ready? But yeah, so I think that we need answers to the surface level issues. Ozymandias, like, what is he doing? Is he there on his own validity? Is this happening in the same timeline? All these things need to be answered, and they need to be for a reason. You can't just have these bigger philosophical views and cultural issues addressed, which are beautiful, without the surface level plot threads being concluded. That's my shtick on it.
Yeah, she's chasing a carrot on a stick, in a sense, but the story's going to be unfolding around her while she's chasing this carrot. The carrot is not the story. Her ultimate journey with herself is probably the story, and maybe some of these other characters that we've been introduced to, probably mainly Laurie Blake, which is either going to be friend or foe, or looking like both at this time. This is kind of what she needs for her character to kind of see where if Angela Abar keeps going where she's going, she's going to end up like Laurie Blake.
Yes.
Without a soul.
Yes. Now, Laurie Blake, her ambition is for Night Owl's release, it seems, because Senator Keene tells her that a president, because he wants to become president, it seems like if this doesn't fall to pieces, because remember, the Keene Act is what is on the line for them. That is what's on the line right there, is the Keene Act spreading out. So I think that this mass vigilante law is going to be something that we're going to see the 7th Cavalry is fighting against. And we're going to see, we're not going to be like, go 7th Cavalry by any means, but we're going to see a deeper level to this. And we're going to see, oh, okay, because, yeah, shit's also not okay with cops just being able to go away with due process, to just beat the shit out of people. What happened in Nixonville wasn't okay. they were just punishing the whole community for the act of, yes, probably a lot of them, that they straight up say it. So if you watch this show and you only get the idea that they're trying to push down propaganda down your throat, you're not paying attention, because there's a lot of they're not as overt, but it's definitely not a gleaming example of how like the ultra left way is the way to go either. It's just a good example of what's happening right now. Everybody's so on the right or so on the left that there's nobody thinking, they're thinking either far right or far left. Nobody has their head on their shoulders and says, hey, actually, like, I'm a liberal, but I'll say it up front, I don't care about gun rights. I'm perfectly happy with everybody keeping their guns. I think that it's an issue that gets put out there for people just to fight over, and then they vote against their own fiscal interests. So like there's all these issues like abortion, all that, like all these things are stuck out there, and people vote their hearts, not their minds, and that's what goes. Like, just because you're liberal doesn't mean you want to take people's guns, doesn't mean you want to kill babies, so like we have to find some middle ground, and I think this show is exploring this, and I hope he does it successfully. I'm just a little worried because he did come off the bat, I think, and people argue with me about this, he should have been more cloak and dagger about it. He came out and said, I'm addressing race, I'm doing this. Yes, he's being honest, but that already turns so many people off from the show because it feel like it's propaganda.
Yeah, I don't agree with how they promoted this at all. I think they feel really strongly and passionate about it because there's a lot of emotions that are going into this, and he kind of wrote this coming off of Charlottesville, or used that as kind of a springboard, which it doesn't matter who you are, that's going to invoke emotions at some point in time. And it's going to be tough. He has set himself up for a tough task to finish this out. I know he can't change anything at this point in time, and I just don't know. I think it's going to turn out good. So far, it's not been too overhanded or whatever.
Yeah. I'm loving how we have this I'm very interested to know Will's situation, aren't you? Like, I'm very interested to know what Judd was up to. I'm very interested to know what Adrian is up to with his shitty 5-act screenplay and his Leonardo da Vinci-esque workshop that he's got himself in. Like, these are all things that I want to see in the next episode, so that shows you it's working. Because I want to see, like, I can have fun with the show. I want to see what's happening with Jeremy Irons, who's playing a fantastic role, I believe. Like, and it's fun, right? Like, because this show's not all fun. I think that's pretty clear. But it's still a fun show that we have these expectations that, we're going to get some answers to some pretty cool stuff with Dr. Manhattan, with Adrian and stuff like that. And we can move into that. But again, this stuff right here can't go unresolved.
At play.
Yeah, it's a personal journey with herself. I think
your head would explode. So
it has to be resolved because it's all about her in this aspect of the storyline.
How does she change once it's resolved?
Right. Who does she become? And how much does that affect everyone around her? Is her transformation or metamorphosis going to be the thing that makes or breaks the entire series? Honestly, that's a really good question.
How much do you think we're gonna see old Silk Spectre, like Lori here? How much do you think we're gonna see her transform? Because I think it's just as important to see Sister Knight's effect on Lori.
Yes. I think Lori sees herself in her, of course, kind of like what I've talked about, but she also sees how it may be off-putting to her to see yourself in a mirror. It would be to me. I wouldn't like myself. I'd never be friends with myself.
I don't like it. I can't watch my videos. I hate myself.
It's an intriguing thought. It's like looking in a mirror. She is the aged version of Angela Abar. And what is she going to become? She going to let pain and suffering rule her life in a negative way, or is she going to turn it into a positive? That's the thing.
In the motivation behind her change of ideals is somewhat a little bit gray as well, because yeah, it does seem that she's obviously not happy with how it ended up for her and the rest of the Minutemen. But also, you know, it seems like they were obtained, her and Night Owl were obtained at the same time, and she chose to work with, she chose to pretty much be a rat, right? And Night Owl didn't. So Night Owl, her friend that she wants to get out, still believes in the way they do justice, correct? Well, you would be fair to say that.
Maybe he was like Rorschach's best friend.
Yeah.
This is where we can get the vindication of Rorschach's journal, where we know that it's not some white power manifesto, because he's going to know the most about it. He was the closest to Rorschach of anyone, and Night Owl, I can't remember his street name, but Night Owl in general, I think is going to get out, because Lori is in love with him too. Him and Dr. Manhattan. It's like this weird love triangle type thing that plays off from the original comic. And I think he's going to give resolution to what's going on with the 7th Cavalry, why they like Rorschach, like why they believe what they believe, and also why they're wrong. I think that's really important for a lot of people that love Rorschach's character. They don't want his name to be tarnished forever.
Yeah, they don't want to. Well, you know, he hates base human pleasures. He hates how he sees society as just a whole bunch of self-serving, which to a point it is. He sees people, you know, he has multiple reasons for not being a sexual person, but he sees even sex crimes he forgives, because he kind of like shuns the idea of like a primitive base pleasures. So he sees like New York City as this just slum made by the people that's living in it. People are just filth, and they're just subjective to their own darkest and weakest ambitions and actual their base desires. Plot hole right here. He said 105 pounds right here on his little deceased, his little death certificate says 190 pounds. Bam, right there. Eat that, Reddit. Johnny, I don't know if I lost you or not, but we will go ahead and go into...
You didn't lose me.
Yeah, but did you see this on screen right now, dude? We're cracking Reddit straight open. They said 205 pounds. Bam, death certificate, 190 pounds.
Well, I thought Reddit was God, man.
Right there. I am starting a subreddit. Yeah, so we got... Okay, let's move on to a little bit of the sillier side of it, which I'm interested to know what people think about how this is going to impact the story, because I can't really put my finger on it. With Adrian, who we now know is Ozzy, I just keep saying Ozymandias, but I know that's incorrect.
I fuck it up. I want to say Ozymandias, but it's Ozymandias.
Ozymandias. Okay, so we now know this. The game warden is also refers to him as, I believe, master. Or he says loyal subject or something. The vernacular he uses suggests that there is the power structure is Adrian at the top. Either way. So how do you take what's happening there? I think he's entertaining himself. That's my take on it. He's challenging himself. He made himself a worthy adversary. That's my take.
This might take me just a second, but yes, John Haymaker also asked, are Ozymandias' servants clones? I think so. They're at least genetic alterations. They're probably test tube babies at the very least. He does seemingly have a nice little supply of them, and this goes back to the tomato tree that you saw in the first episode. Yes, that was a tomato tree, which kind of blew my mind, and I was like, fuck this guy. This guy's a pretentious asshole. But at first, I wanted to think with the clocks that they were possibly androids or robots, you know, but that might be a little too Westworld, so they had to go a little different route with that. But he has actually made clones before, I think, in the graphic novels as well, and also he's experimented with animals,
genetic engineering.
You know, yes, there you go, and you know, this goes back to him formulating his name when he went to Cairo, Egypt, and visited the pyramids, and they are Egypt's notorious for chimeras, so I think that's where they're playing with on that. So we're trying to figure out what this guy's doing. He seems to be on some kind of, like you said, self-imposed exile. He's considered dead on 3 continents in the real world here. So no one really knows he's alive. People suspect it. Now, I think he's almost like Pablo Escobar.
Oh,
He made his own prison and he's staying in there. He sold
I
his
like
stock out to Lady True, but once he made his own prison, I don't think he can get out of there. And there may be certain conditions that depend on him staying there, hence making these clones, sending them in the air. Lady True may even provide these clones for him because she is a trillionaire in this world and she has seemingly taken over the entire tech industry. She took over because he actually failed when Dr. Manhattan left, and all of his technology that was associated with Dr. Manhattan was considered carcinogenic.
Mm-hmm.
So his stocks, like his prediction and stock, everything just went down. And his name would tarnish anything, so he couldn't sell anything anymore. So now I guess he's trying to build his name back up through Lady True, but it's going to be interesting to see how much power she has. Some people think he's on Mars. Some people think he's in South America. I think he could be in Russia. And this goes back to them trying to make a Dr. Manhattan and him just wanting this chaos and to become the savior of the world. Like Dr. I think he's envious of Dr. Manhattan's godlike status. Yeah. Because he is a sociopath through and through.
And I feel bad because I kind of don't have an issue with the way he solved shit. His whole way of doing things was, yes, rule by fear and using the fear of the other, which is also, because this is a race war in the sense of it's the human race versus squids. It's the human race versus what Dr. Manhattan did, was these other beings did. It's the fear of the other that has been utilized since the beginning of time. So, but what he did was he figured out that if you give people a common enemy, that they stop. I think that there's, you can give him a little credit. But yeah, I think he's testing himself. I think he's trying to test and build himself back up because, we're dealing, when you have somebody like Manhattan, and I guess in the graphic novels, they allude to that he's deceived him in the past, but like Dr. Manhattan should have a handle on whatever he's doing in theory. But I think there's enough evidence provided in the graphic novels to say that he can like kind of blindside him and put the wool over his eyes. But what I think is interesting is like, how do we, because yes, it almost is confirmed that they're trying to make a Russian, and remember, Leningrad is what they call Moscow. That means the Soviet Union never ended, people. So I mean, whatever, however you feel about that, I don't care. But that's what's happening in this timeline. So we have what's going to probably be a red man versus a blue man. And that's going to be maybe something else to distract the 7th Cavalry and the what's going on in Tulsa right there. And, the mutual destruction seems to be the clock that Lindelof says is ticking is pretty much they're going to implode on themselves. Like he fears our society will, because we keep jamming things up. We keep not doing the right things. We
also keep pushing each other to extremes on either end. There's moderates seem to be the devil in this world. If you're not on one side or the other, go fuck yourself.
Yeah. Like I'm not liberal enough because I don't want to take, because I don't care. Have your guns. I don't think like you need a bunch of guns. I don't know. I don't get into that. I like shooting pistols. But if you want an AK and you think that your right to bear arms is going to stop, like if the government wants to bomb your house, good luck. You better have a right to a stealth fighter in a fleet, in a fucking aircraft carrier. So it's like, I don't get all that. It's all just whatever. I think it'd be better if it was harder to get guns, but I'm not going to vote because of that. And I think a lot of people vote, like I said, for just reasons of the heart, not the mind. We're not ran by logic, we're ran by emotion. And I think that both parties utilize those aspects, and nobody votes due to their fiscal interests. They vote due to like what they believe in religiously, what they believe in ethically, whatever.
Right. And the higher ups don't give a shit about anything but money and power and propaganda. And we'll see that, they like to play this up. That's what this is. This is our world under a magnifying glass, to say the least, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it perfectly reflects society.
And that's what I wanted to touch on really quick, is how Lindelof does say, and which I highly suggest you guys listen to this podcast, because it's very telling, and I think that's very rare that we get a very complex series. This is just like if Nolan said exactly what he wanted to do with Westworld. It's very intriguing. But he does say something. He said that if Africans, because it'd be Africans, had a utopia like Wakanda per se, that whites would burn it to the ground. I don't like that, because that's a Lord of the Flies take on things, where the kids get dropped off on the island and just become monsters within one night. They don't look into conditioning, which this series in which he's giving us, he definitely has a lot of the social conditioning and all those aspects into it. So I think it's a very black and white, and a weird thing for him to say. Maybe he misspoke. He kind of like that. He seemed to, it's kind of hard to misspeak that. He said literally he's thought about the situation and believes. So he can believe whatever he believes. I don't go down that route. I think it's, I don't want to say that Caucasians would burn down an African utopia. I think that's a very pessimistic way to look at things. I do think that we need to look at some of the things that happened in the past. Yes, it could happen, of course. It's not everything's possible. But yeah, I thought that was an odd
had
take.
the Ottomans burning down all kinds of stuff. I guess you could argue those weren't white people, but we're not getting into.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like,
you see what I'm saying? It's a slippery slope when you get there,
It's a gray area, you know what I mean? So, well, York, it is a political show, and it wants people to think about their ideas. I think it wants people to think about having the shoe on the other foot. We don't care when people that are suspected of being with ISIS are detained without rights. But when we see people in this show get detained without rights, it's just putting the shoe on the other foot. Nobody's trying to say that, like, the right is evil or the left is right, because they have showcased the folly in that type of belief. And again, like Johnny said, it's so hard to be a moderate these days. Like it's I don't agree with who the hell agrees with the actual stated platform that any specific candidate is running on these days. It's like, we're human beings. Either on the left you're some snowflake, or you're a Nazi on the right. That's not the way things are. And I think that he needs to showcase that. That's why I didn't like his comment. That's why I was like,
don't you dare try to be reasonable and make solid arguments for things, because then you just get picked apart. And
yeah.
But that's just the nature of society as it's coming to. Our society is under a microscope with the way that social media is today. A reflection of this is they don't have social media in this world, but the society still seems to be somewhat the same way. Now, I would argue that's the difference. This is the catalyst for what we have right now. So many people with extreme ideas can get together now, and it seems like a lot more people than it truly is. And it's just a group of, dare I say it, insane people.
Well,
it's
you're seeing it right now. It's happening right now. But yeah, everybody gets a voice. So the other side of that is, because I think that nothing should ever be taboo to talk about, because as soon as you table a discussion, as soon as you stop letting people discuss things, and you become irreasonable and just not open to any new ideas, you just start going down a bad road. And that's what happens now. You can't say one thing, people are just so touchy about it. And then the right is so touchy about people being touchy. So they're hypothetically so upset about potentially other people being too upset that it's a little bit hilarious. But it's outrage culture on both sides. And, when we look at what happens when you push people into the shadows to do what they do, that's, like when you make people not be able to be out in the open, meaning without a mask, do what they want to do, then you have a very corrupt, and you usually see the worst atrocities in our world's history, is when we force these ideas into the shadows. We don't kill them. We just table them. We taboo them, and we force them down into the shadows. People meet in basements, people meet in secret clubs, they put hoods and masks on, and they commit atrocities. And this is what that show is addressing. And it's very interesting. Also, fun move and good move on their part, because the biggest issue these days is, notice how you don't see iPhones in very many television series, because like a phone in a lot of circumstances solves almost any issue, especially if it's like an action thing, because you're like, somebody's running from like somebody that's trying to kill them. It's like, got to get to the payphone, or somebody cuts the line. It's like, no, fuck that. It's like, I got Wi-Fi calling. I've got like 3 different ways. I've got 80 different ways to call people and get my help. So they've eliminated phones. But that is very, I like that insight that you had there. That's a good perspective, that it's very odd that people would be, it would be this inflated without what's actually happening right now. I think that's
Maybe they all call each other on the Dr. Manhattan phones. Who knows? I know that in any of my stories, a giant tornado is going to wipe out all the cell phone towers.
See,
So
but
that's
then
how we're
everything's
going
good,
with that
man.
one.
It's just like the squid, man. You know.
That's a hard problem to fix, especially in a suspenseful situation. So
let's go over to the chat. We've got the other John here, John Haymaker, also known as John Saint Baptiste. Valid point, because what I believe that Linfield was actually speaking to, or Lindelof, sorry, Linfield. Now I'm changing history. Was, yes, because you could look at Black Wall Street, as Tulsa was known at the time, as being an African utopia, an African American utopia, but nonetheless, this is what he's alluding to. So, and you can't shame him on the part of, he started writing this before Tokyo was happening, before Hong Kong. Before, look at how many people are wearing, and in Mexico City, the cops do wear masks because of the cartels.
yeah,
I mean,
and
it's not like this shit ain't happening, man. Yeah.
And they have to be corrupt or else, it's oh, dude, that shit's crazy, man. I mean, and it's not
the world,
things,
but I'm loving the series.
Well, yeah. I mean, but I don't know. It's a natural, I guess, pretty easy prediction on where things would go, but it is good on his part. The Keen Act. I mean, when cops wear masks, when anybody wears masks, that's going back to what you were talking about, and kind of the whole point of this show is, you feel like you're hiding behind it. You hide your consequences, you hide your shame, you hide your fear, like you were saying earlier, and that's kind of the meat of this story.
Yes.
Really, the mask. And that's the meat of Watchmen.
The emotional spine. I agree. And it's, it is so true, because what other, there's various other reasons, they put on the masks, but you can't argue that it's fear at the base of it, right? Because they all derive from fear. Nobody puts on a mask that isn't afraid. You can't get away from that, in my opinion. You can't mask what you do if there's not fear involved. So it's, at the very least, you have to succeed to the idea, to my hypothesis there, that there is actual hate and fear in the world. If you can, come down to my level and agree with me, you can take a look at this show without rolling over you and making you into either a Nazi or a snowflake, whichever one, because just like Harry Potter and in Twilight, it's either not Christian enough or too Christian. So people will turn things.
Oh yeah, Harry Potter's the devil, man. That's witchcraft incarnate. Down here in the South.
Yeah.
You don't want to bring that up in a church anywhere. It's just like, oh man, I read Harry Potter. You need to be exorcised, sir.
Yeah. It is what it is, man. People can turn anything into their vehicle. And that's what they touch on too, is how we write history. As soon as we put our pen to the paper and we start writing about a time, we start just forming it to whatever it is, whatever is advantageous at a time. The Old West was nothing but civilness, filth, and fucking nastiness, and quick, and not quick death, a short life and a slow death. The whole colonization of this land was terrible on all parts. Disease ridden, and the ethical issues are very abundant. And he touches on this with Vietnam being won by us. I guess pushing the helicopters off the aircraft carriers, how we signal we're winning the war. That's how we do it. But she Regina is actually not Regina, sorry, Sister Knight is Vietnamese in the sense of she was born there and it's a state now. So we appropriate it and we take the culture, and that's what she's doing it in the classroom. So that's very interesting as well.
Like Hawaii.
Yes, that's what he spoke about. That was interesting because I've heard about the islands, and I've heard about on the Joe Rogan podcast about how you can't move to any island in Hawaii. The big island, yeah, but some of those smaller islands, they don't like when Americans or other outsiders just come in and move there. We think Hawaii was so thrilled to be made a state. We just are conditioned to be like that. But I'm not taking a stance here, but that's an interesting perspective and something that he experienced when filming Lost, along with a lot of other things. But, you know, that the people were not just thrilled.
Polar bears.
Yeah, yeah, you know what I mean? But I think that's an interesting, you know, it's something to take a look at. If you can't watch something, like I said, and without the fear of it plowing over you and making you turn into something else, then how weak-minded are you, man? Like I said, I'm not saying that I'm not happy Hawaii's a state. I think that's pretty kick-ass. Of course I would. I don't know, though. Put the shoe on the other foot and might not be so great. So, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, a lot of this hinges on how everything's cast at the end of this show. Like I said, it's black and white in the beginning. White people bad, black people good, kind of thing. Not necessarily, but it's gonna merge at the end, just like Ozymandias wants, just like what happened in Watchmen. The people are gonna come together. Is it gonna be at great cost to humanity? Maybe, maybe not. That may be a little too predictable for Lindelof standards, but it is all gonna come together as far as you really more understanding why this shit's happening, why the 7th Cavalry are who they are. And maybe they're not just a bunch of just straight up white supremacists. Maybe they are, but there's definitely more complexity here than what meets the eye. And we've had Sister Knight say it in like 3 different episodes, the first 3, that even telling her her dead partner's kids, which she's adopted, that the world is black and white. It's good and evil, and that's it. You know, we know that's not true. And she's got to become a caterpillar. I mean, become a butterfly from a caterpillar and metamorphosize.
Or a moth. the moth's flying around. But yeah, and it's, you know, it's a take on, because as much as I hate to say it, I hate Klansmen. I hate bigots that are simple-minded, but let's face it, people probably didn't join the Klan because they were born racist. You know what I mean? Their story is you know, is irritating as it might be a little bit more complex. We shouldn't have sympathy for them, but the road to that place was not as straightforward as even we depict it as. We just don't want to support it, which we don't, and nobody wants to come off saying like, oh, well, you know, you don't know their story. I'm not saying that, but there still was a story. So, you know, it's just putting the shoe on the other foot and showing how it got there. If you can showcase the 7th Cavalry and showcase how they've taken this ultra liberal stance in some places, this ultra authoritarian stance in others, and you can flip that around with the power structure, which what they've done, they've showcased that with the ability to use deadly force, which was released. Johnny, you brought this off air, but I want to give you credit. Very smart that you picked up on how Judd got the guns released before he was killed. So there's a possibility that Judd hung himself and that he was trying to get this war to kick off, and he was trying to actually flip the situation and cause this chaos and make peace out of it, which is never the best way, but it's very possible that it's more complicated than that, because I've said it time and time again. If he was really a part of the Klan, it wouldn't be this obvious. Nothing adds up about what he was about, from the White Knight to this.
It goes back to the showing the picture of the father as well, and the sins of the father being held up against the son, or however that saying goes. But I believe that's what we're going to see, and he may have even been a part of it. And changed his mind after the White Knight happened, after he made friends with Regina. He seemed to, not Regina, so keep messing up, with Angela Abar.
I know. Regina's her name. Yeah, her name.
Yeah.
I don't know why I know that before anything else. Not a huge fan of her.
And yeah, she needs to take a Hbo class. Anyways, but oh my gosh. But there seemed to be a family bond there. And I mentioned the cocaine habit because he was clearly hiding some sort of pain, living a clear double life a double life in his mind. That can mean a multitude of things. He could still have a foot in the door in the cavalry movement, or he may even not. He may have a foot in the door politically with Senator Keene. That may be something else. It may be all connected, but he might not necessarily be the leader of it. And his father's possible prized possession of being a grand wizard. You know, I don't know for sure, but I don't know if the KKK members wear the full outfits anymore, but I haven't did any research on that. I don't know, but it could be something that he couldn't let go of. It's a piece of history that, maybe something to remind him that he needed to be a better person. I don't know, but I do agree with you that it's not going to be as simple as he was just bad.
And there's, yes, the other side of this coin, which is that we see that the Kane Act, I think, is not being depicted, and I don't interpret it as something that's advantageous. So what he has kicked off by his death, even though, yes, we're seeing the cavalry come back and all this, is putting the Kane Act, again, not ideal, not advantageous, at risk. So he has started the dominoes to fall on the Kane Act, which is something we don't think is good. So the death of Judd is the catalyst for the Kane Act to fall. It is what puts Regina, God damn it, Lori, with Angela, and it's what brings these people together to solve these problems. But also politically, it's what is going to possibly crush that very act. So it's something, either Judd was a part of this in the essence that he wanted to stop what was happening, because, he didn't wear a mask. That's important to take note of. Also, this has switched on these sequence of events that are going for something to be squashed that isn't good, which is the wearing of masks in general. So I think it's something to take into consideration. It just can't be that straightforward. Else, I mean, if it is, I'm gonna be disappointed. That's not great storytelling. So it's just, but I mean, I guess we'll finish it up in a minute here. What do you think? What do you think Ozymandias is going to do once he gets there? Like, what is his role to play if he does get there? Like, how does he, that's one thing that's been bothering me. I'm like, it's interesting and it's fun, and I like counting candles and I like all that, because I do think it's relevant actually here. All the screenshots on Reddit are actually called for it. It's interesting. But it's fun. It's a fun part of the series, but like, what is he going to do if he does get there? Like, what change does he have?
In general, I feel like he saved the world. He got some credit for it, but he didn't get all the credit he deserved. His name took a downward spiral. He's not necessarily remembered for saving the world. He's more remembered for his business going down, and also who he was beforehand. Ozymandias, a superhero that saved the day, so to speak. I think that's what he's going to try to do again. Whether it be a way to defeat Dr. Manhattan or just creating another Dr. Manhattan, he wants to be the face behind it. Maybe even an Oz, what would you call it? A Wizard of Oz type figure. But he wants to be the head of it. He wants to have that glory again. He wants to feel relevant. He keeps reliving the same day. It's that, he keeps having the anniversary every day of the day of the interdimensional attack. Mm-hmm. And that also makes me think he may be in some little fucking time bubble of his own demise. And this goes back to the TikTok. Maybe he's inside the millennial clock and is actually reliving that same fucking day. But that's just getting into some crazy tinfoil.
Do you think the clock is going to hit by the finale? Because they do have a literal clock in the show.
Yeah, I think it's got to hit, don't you think?
I think that's where it falls in, right? Like that's where we might get Manhattan, because if another Dr. Manhattan's made, then that's where they both would be relevant for the series. So it's just that really, I hope if they do that we get another season. Because this is only supposed to be, he's only signed for one, which is interesting, which is actually a good sign for people, even like myself, that don't have all the faith that all like the huge Lindelof supporters have, but I'm starting to come around. But I like that he only took one season, because that tells me something. That tells me that he has a story that he knows he can complete. That's interesting. That's some goodwill right there to know that, that he didn't only want, but he took one season. So that meant he knew he could tell the story he's trying to tell in one season. It's when people start asking for more and more and more that you got to be worried. Or when people say, hey, we only need 6 episodes to do 30-40% of the story, that it'll be good. So it's an interesting thought that he said 10 episodes. I believe it's 10. Yeah. So I think Jeremy Irons is playing a great role. I think it's
He's
well
doing good.
shot, man. It's a pretty show. It looks nice. It's shiny. It's a little bit of an existential crisis on fucking crack, but it's fun, you know. It is. It's a little bit of a downer, but I think
We
there's
say
just,
math for the white trailer park.
Yeah.
People, okay, we'll say
Yeah.
math.
So, but you know, some people might not get why it's appealing, and I think that if you watch it, you'll see it's got layers, and that there's just some fun aspects to it that are so just out of the blue and abstract that it's really interesting. And especially with Jeremy Irons, I gotta say that he really does lighten the mood, and it just really takes you out of the gutter sometimes when he comes on screen.
Yeah.
I laugh so hard at he underscored consequences. I don't know why I find that so funny, but him living this sociopath living, and the guy that I highly relate to.
I'm glad you enjoyed the tomatoes.
I know. Yeah, I just highly relate to this gentleman. Everybody's like, oh, he's a piece of shit. I'm like, I love him. I don't see anything wrong with what he did. I think what he did was pragmatic. It worked. But I think Mackenzie asked in the chat, have I finished The Expanse yet? No, I have not. I went down this rabbit hole, as well as doing a lot of other videos for Peaky Blinders. I will catch up, I promise. Oh yeah, I forgot. We got to do our pitch. You ready for the random fandom pitch, Johnny?
Yeah, man, I think I'm somewhat ready for it. Tick, 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 boom.
I didn't even get that.
I think
yet.
so.
Let's do it. And remember, guys, click that link. You know, I'm supporting them because they support me. You don't have to put a credit card, and it's 2 gigs of a VPN where you can go watch any region's Netflix, any region's Hulu, all BBC, all of the iPlayer and stuff that we don't have access to. And it's one of those rare actual services that doesn't take your credit card, because that's usually a business model. It's, hey, let's hope that these people don't remember to unsubscribe to this service. So let's get the random fandom block up, and then I'll shill a little bit more, and then we should be good. So Johnny, this is the way we do it. I give us 30 seconds to pitch something. Johnny's going to have a pitch. Last time he pitched Watchmen, I believe, right?
I think so.
Yes.
I have a bad memory.
And I did the Kane, which the Kane was a home. I didn't pitch it well, but that. If you haven't seen the Kane on Netflix, watch it. It's
Fucking
really
awesome.
good. Yes. So I believe that you are going to be doing The End of the Fucking World. Is that correct?
The End of the Fucking World on Netflix.
Yeah,
man.
and I'm going to be doing The Crown. So we have, let's get it up here. I'll tell you when, 'cause there's a slight delay. This is state-of-the-art technology here.
I like turtles.
Go.
What's up? End of the Fucking World on Netflix. A coming of age story of Bonnie and Clyde, a super dark comedy, and 2 kids that have the most fucked up childhoods and get into these crazy adventures. It's really short. I watched the whole first season yesterday, and the second season that's just dropped now. It's refreshing, and it's just up your alley. If you don't have a little bit of soul, you like serial killers and getting into the mind and psyche of young people going through fucked up situations. That's way better than Euphoria. And I would say, yeah, that's it. Yeah, man. That's what you gotta do. Black heart.
Okay, my mic was off. Everybody didn't hear me call you a piece of shit. I'm cutting in my own time now. I'm doing The Crown. What The Crown is about the last fucking monarch. Think about this. We are living in a time when there is still a monarch in Europe, and France has castles. There ain't no monarchs in them. England still has a monarch. Elizabeth is a very interesting story. I think she actually had social impact, whether you think it's good or bad. It happened, and for a queen to still have pull in 2020, I think that we're living in the last time of a monarch, and that it's something that's going to be looked at as fucking epic in history. Check it out. That sucked again.
Sexy.
Yeah, it's the queen, you know, she has clout, and that's interesting. Do you really think there's going to be much more time in this world where there's a reigning king or queen? I would think that it was going to die probably. I think it might go 2 people after her at the most. It's going to get to Will and William and Kate's George, I believe his name is, of course. I think it'll get to George and they'll get rid of it. But it's
Will and Kate
interesting. They're
plus
going to look
8.
at this time where the last time that there was a monarch, you know? So it's an interesting story too, you know? She actually, she does shit. She does shit, people. Whether you agree with it or not, she's doing shit. So I think you won that one again. I got to start preparing for these. Yeah, the end of the fucking world season 1 is epic, by the way. So I'm really looking forward to the second season.
Good.
How have you watched it?
I've got about 4 episodes into the second season, and decisions made all throughout the first season are coming back around. It's one of those piece together storytelling type narrations with inner dialogue that I find not overused, but fucking essential for the show. Without that, I don't think the show would be what it is. I really dig it, man. It's kind of hard to describe because it's so dark, but it's a situation that anybody could probably find themselves in at some point, especially if you went through anything these 2 kids went through. But it's not some drug-fueled sex rampage. And, if you hated Euphoria, you'll like this.
Not actual Euphoria. And I'm putting the bonus VPN. Yeah, I really enjoyed the first season. The only thing that was off for me, I'm an animal lover and I hate that, but it was true to what people like that will do. The little bit of the animal cruelty kind of got me, but I really thought the series was it pulled it off, and that's a hard thing to do with that subject matter. I thought it was very well done, and it actually has I'm not happy. I'm not gonna say happy, but they start to go in a positive place.
Made me happy.
Yeah.
I mean, Jim Whalen got beat with a shotgun, so you can't beat that. I mean, got me feeling good.
Learning something about Johnny here. So ladies, pay attention. Let's see.
Hello, ladies.
Man, why does it keeps John, your messages, it keeps trying to block. It keeps holding John's questions for review. I don't know why. He's not saying anything bad. Yeah,
John's a controversial dude.
It just knows you, John. It just knows you. I love you. But maybe my YouTube, yeah, it's the artificial intelligence there. So yeah, sorry guys. I was just saying during that time in between Johnny and Mai's pitch that I don't prepare for these, even though it's a segment I made, ironically. So yeah, The Expanse and all that we will be covering when it comes out. Westworld, I'm trying to get a Before the Dust Settles 1 for Watchmen. I'm trying to schedule it for episode 6. Johnny, you're of course invited. I don't have confirmation. I'm trying to get that going down because I think that it's almost essential. It's extra necessary for this show to have a Before the Dust Settles episode right after the show to try to break down Watchmen, because it's just as complex as Westworld, and that's what drew me to that venture right there. So yeah, guys,
I'll touch it, man.
Yeah, there you go, man. Let me make sure that link works right there. So no, they're legit right there. You know, they're not the biggest VPN, but they definitely hey, you get 2 gigs and you don't got to give a credit card. What more can I say? Try to get anything else without. Try to get a freaking app store free app without a credit card. You can't even get something for free usually without a credit card. So no risk of them, baiting you. So, and I've liked it. I watched Rick and Morty on Netflix and I enjoyed it because I didn't have to have any commercial breaks. And remind you that comes out during the season on English or British people on your Netflix. They get it the night of. They get it on Sunday night on their Netflix and they release it weekly like Hulu, but without commercials. So check it out. And let's see, Westworld season 3. Yeah, it's going to be dropping. We're going to be covering it. I think they went to 8 episodes. That's another, again, a good sign, a void of confidence right there, because it's cutting the bullshit. It's not going to hopefully be some, putting the wool over your eyes for no reason other than to trick you and push something further than it needs to go. So 8 episodes, some people are upset, but I say, hey, if they got a story and they only need 8 episodes for it, they literally, Dan and Dave, if you're watching, which it's actually possible you are now because you have probably nothing else to do. Yeah, when you actually only need limited amount of episodes to tell a story, it's usually a good sign. not when you have like 30 to 40% of a story to finish. Yeah, I can't thank you enough, Johnny, and everybody for stopping by. And I know that you're going to be doing some House of the Dragon stuff on your channel, and you should be a go-to for this old masterpiece right here. And I truly actually believe that. I think this is one hell of it's a way easier read for anybody that's not into the books, by the way. Fire and Blood is the way to go if you're a moderate in the A Song of Ice and Fire world. So Johnny, you can do any last goodbyes, pitches, shilling.
Last goodbye, chilling pinches. Like I said, I got a new series coming out with Bravosi Broadcast, aka Fake Aria. In the chat, we'll be doing the Dance of Dragons, the Dragons and the Riders will be the first video coming out, and the Chronicles of Fire and Blood. We'll be covering the whole book on my Patreon. I do like a book club there as well. But Watchmen every Monday at 7 p.m. with Dornish Winch, Fandom de Saint, Alicia Kingston, and have a couple of special guests as well. We'll get into that. It's very fun to talk about it. This week we dressed up in mask, and Justin said we
look like a fucking Al Qaeda 2001 video, dude. I mean, it's not going to beat around the bush. It's very disturbing. It reminded me of the time I got real high and watched the video on YouTube. I shouldn't have. We gave Justin nightmares. Yeah, all wearing masks and shit. Ridiculous. And Fandom de Saint, I just don't condone him.
That's kind of what you do. But I'm gonna be having some Westworld quick draws come out. Talking about the characters, maybe some predictions on where they'll be going in the future. Just some short little character breakdowns, and that's about it. We'll be covering a bunch of shows with live streams, but I'll be doing a little more videos and podcasts.
Well, that's quite a bit already. So, I mean,
lots of stuff.
Yeah, check out Johnny. His link's in there. Barbara McCullough has actually got a very interesting comment here before we go. Have any of you done a comparison of all the streaming services and what they cost and what's best for your money? This is something that I'm very interested in doing, Barbara, actually. Not only just for myself, but for the channel, because I'm surprised there's not more of it. I do want to go and see the new Jason Momoa Apple Plus. I want to see the astronaut. I don't remember what it's called, but is it Made in America or whatever? Apple Plus seems to have a plethora of what appears to be very good content. So I'm very interested in Apple Plus. And then we've got HBO Max coming out. Of course, we've got Disney coming out with their own. So it's something that I would definitely look into doing. And if there's a demand for me to do it, like, publicly, and give my 2 cents on it, definitely I would like to do that. That's something that I was considering both on a personal level and for the content. So yeah, awesome. Yeah, and I mean, I'm ready to pull the trigger on Apple Plus if I get a few more good reviews for some of those series. So it's going to get interesting soon. It's going to get expensive too, real soon. So
yeah,
the days of Netflix and HBO.
Justin's Patreon, and he'll take you out for ice cream.
No,
if y'all ever see each other, he will take you straight for ice cream. He gives the best ice cream jobs I've ever had.
They're soft, very soft. So yeah. Somebody mentioned before the pleasuring themselves with the Dr. Manhattan piece. It's pretty much it's pretty much right on the nose for what they're showcasing both the graphic novels and in this series is the glamorification of nostalgia, the nostalgicizing of things. So literally masturbating to the past. So
how the memory of something isn't always quite as sweet as what actually happened.
Yeah, no, that's YouTube. We see what happens after. We're like, oh fuck, that wasn't any good. So yeah, it is always what it is. But yeah, I mean, hey, fuck, that's a good marketing for Dr. Manhattan's got that dildo money. Make sure to subscribe, check out the VPN. We'll end it on that dildo money, and we will see you guys soon. I love